would say there are four main points of what this means for you and your ministries. The first is that there is the likelihood for less clarity. I would say the number of pieces of guidance, of clarity, of revised language that came out of the last administration was very, very high. And so as some of these policies are reconsidered or potentially altered or rolled back, it might mean that we move back into a space of some open questions as to how an agency is going to apply a certain area of federal law. And this could be including things like the interpretations of religious exemptions in employment, eligibility for federal funding, I think is going to be a really big next frontier. And so there will be some potential for open questions there. These proposed regulations can sometimes be unclear when you get a new piece of regulations from an agency. It might not be clear from that new reg how it's going to apply in the context of religious organizations. And so continuing to pursue clarity with agencies in new regulatory frontiers is going to be important. A second point that I think is, and I kind of just touched on it and referenced it in my last comment, is the potential for new regulations or legislative language. So a couple of pending, very large, important bills pending before Congress or that will be reintroduced soon are the Equality Act, which expands non-discrimination protections across 7 different areas of law, including in the area of public accommodations. So it's a really massive change to current federal law, but it's a bill that has no religious exemptions and dials back the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which we discussed earlier, and the Do No Harm Act, which would just amend RFRA. Both of those are things that are pending before Congress that would have a huge impact on religious organizations if they're passed. And the Biden administration has said that the Equality Act is a priority for them. So we know that that's a discussion that will be on the table. There are other potential revisions to regulatory protections for conscience protections, like we discussed in the arena of HHS and grants and contracts, which I think we've mentioned already. I think third, in what ways it increases the importance of your voice. Are you prepared to communicate the impact of your ministry and your needs and how certain policy proposals will impact you and your effectiveness? And I don't mean become policy experts on everything. I mean, for example, when you work for a member of Congress, it's your job to know who the important faith-based organizations, employers, all sorts of different issue areas in your district, to know who they are. And so are you prepared to have those conversations, explain what you do and what that impact is in your community? You can't assume that just because you're in a ministry that members of Congress or their staff or agency staff are going to inherently understand what you do and how it's valued to the people that you are ministering to. It's not inherently obvious. There's been a lot of work done trying to put a dollar value on the impact of religion in American society. And the best study out there right now, study done by Brian Grimm, he measured the socioeconomic impact of America. So they estimated out of 344,000 communities, congregations across the country, that the combined annual value of these organizations and what they add to their communities is $243.9 million. That is more than Google, Apple, and Amazon combined. Huge dollar amount of organizations that are doing things like food pantries, ministering to the homeless, helping people who maybe don't have a shelter over their heads, dealing with issues like domestic violence or immigration, and helping people get settled when they're completely new here and have no pre-existing connections. There's very tangible evidence of the impact of faith-based organizations, but you just can't assume that that's going to translate without you helping to connect the dots a little bit. So your voice and your ability to tell your story is going to matter. And then for lawyers, litigation doesn't really sound all that intimidating, but I know from talking to our amazing clients who step up to the plate and are willing to go to bat for hashing out their rights in the legal arena. There are times where conversation runs out and you need to ask a court to settle a dispute over how to interpret a certain area of law. How does RFRA apply? What does Title VII mean? What is the constitutional doctrine that comes into play here? And sometimes there is a need to defend your organizational rights and your ability to minister consistent with your faith in that arena. And
subscribe to our YouTube channel for more finance, governance, and fundraising news and insights for your church or ministry.